has been stated that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. According to Kabbalah, men are from Za and women are from Malchus. According to the anatomy of the human body, the women represent the heart and men represent the brain. The brain representing intellect and the heart representing understanding. Just like the body cannot survive without a heart or a brain, so too both men and women are equally essential for the perfection of the universe. So if they are truly the same but different, or different but equal, why must there be a machitza, separation, during the time of davening, during the time of prayer? It's interesting to note that the synagogue today is constructed very similarly to the synagogue or the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, which was the first synagogue. And the blueprints of that synagogue was actually created by God Himself and given to King David. And the Beis Hamikdash was constructed by King David's son, Shlomo HaMelech. And there too we find that men and women were separated. So the question is, why is there a separation between men and women in the shul and the synagogue? And I believe we can answer this question with the following halacha. We are told that during the time of intimacy, a man is not allowed to think about a different woman. In other words, when a husband is together with his wife, at that time of intimacy, he's not allowed to think about another woman. That's the halacha. And the question is, and not during the time of intimacy, can the man think about another woman? But the answer is that this halacha was written at a time when polygamy was allowed. In other words, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our forefather, had two wives. He had Rachel and Leah. Says the halacha that when he's with Leah, even though perhaps Leah was his second wife, his non-favorite wife, when he was with Leah, he's not allowed to be thinking about Rachel. But he must be with Leah physically, emotionally, and spiritually. This concept also applies to the synagogue. Because what is the concept of prayer? Prayer, our rabbis tell us, is da lifnei mi ata omed. The concept of prayer is to know before whom you stand. The word da really means intimacy. It's a euphemism for intimacy. In other words, in Chassidus we are taught that there are three levels to wisdom, or three parts of the brain. The first deals with Chachma, which is the concept, an idea, a lightning bolt, a flash of intellect. And then you expound on that intellect. That is called Bina, understanding. And finally, you have the third concept, which is called Da'as. Da'as is to bring the understanding down into action, application. So Chachma is the concept, Bina is understanding, Da'as is action. And therefore, we find in the Torah, it says, V'adam yodes Chava, Adam knew his wife Chava, and he begot children. From knowing your wife long distance, you don't beget children. Yet Torah uses the word das, knowledge, or to know, as a euphemism for intimacy. And the same is true with prayer. What is really the objective of prayer? That man and God become one. Da lifnei mi ata omei. Know that you are standing before God in an intimate setting. When it comes to intimacy, you're not allowed to think about someone else, another party. And therefore, we need the mechitza. Because can you imagine how a man is sitting in prayer and he tells God, V'yahavta, I love you with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my might. And God says, really? So who's that beautiful woman sitting next to you? You can't tell me you're only thinking about me. You're also thinking about her. And vice versa. If the woman says, God, I love you with all my heart and with all my soul, with all my might, and then she's sitting next to this handsome young fellow, God says, really, you're thinking about me, or are you thinking about him? And I know your thoughts. And therefore, to eliminate distraction, so that we should truly focus on God and have an intimate relationship with God, we need to separate the sexes. Because they are the most opposite, and therefore they cause the most distraction. Now, in truth, there's another reason for having the mechitza. Not only to eliminate distraction, but the mechitza, the separation, is also to eliminate conversation. And here too I bring an example from intimacy. Can you imagine at a time of intimacy with your spouse and with your partner, all of a sudden your cell phone goes off and you tell your partner, hold on, I got to take the call. Your partner is going to throw you out of the room. That phone call is more important than me. You just told me how much you love me. You just told me that I am your entire life. You just told me that there's nothing in the world that matters besides me. And all of a sudden you're taking the call. You can't push that off till tomorrow. Now, during prayer, we are having intimacy with God. And all of a sudden your neighbor starts talking to you. I said, hello, are you talking to me or are you talking to him? Are you having intimacy with me or with the person and fellow sitting next to you? The Alter Rebbe actually gives an example that when we are praying, we are standing before God in his private chamber, face to face, and all of a sudden you tell God, who's the King of all kings, excuse me a second, I got to take this call. Can you imagine what that is? That's called moeded b'malchus. You rebelled against the king. You deserve to be put to death on the spot. And that is the seriousness of prayer. It is da lifnei mi ata omed. You are standing before God, the King of all kings. How can you talk to your friend? And therefore, just like it is prohibited to talk man to woman during prayer, it's also prohibited for man to talk to his friend or woman to talk to her friend. And that is why, perhaps, men wear a talis, and the talis is supposed to go over your head to create a blinder and a mechitza and a separation between you and your neighbor. Now, in truth, and I've said this many times, that really a shul should be made up with box seats. In other words, to give each person a cubicle. And you go into that cubicle, and you separate yourself between the person next to you and in front of you and back of you, and you focus on God, and you have intimacy with God, and there's no distraction. So not only should there be a mechitza between men and women, but really there should be a mechitza also between men and men. Or man and man. Or woman and woman. And the only answer that I have come up with of why we cannot do this is because this would be a fire hazard. It would be impossible to get hundreds and thousands of people into a shul, and each one would have to get into their inner cubicle. So therefore we try to set the basic parameters. And we eliminate the basic distractions, men and women. Men on one side, women on the other side. And then the men themselves should have their talis. And hopefully the women will have that ability also not to speak to their neighbor. So that is the concept of mechitza. How How do we connect this with halacha? How do we have a proof to what we're saying is true? That the place of intimacy with God is a synagogue. We find a halacha that says like this, that a father or a mother or a parent in a synagogue is not allowed to kiss their child, even not during the time of prayer. Why? Because synagogue is a place of romance between man and God. And even though the love of a parent to a child is applauded, and it's a love that we remind God, Kerachim of Abanim, just like a father has mercy on his children, God, you have mercy upon us. Yet, in the synagogue, our love is dedicated to one place and focused on one reality, and that is God. Now that we established that we need a mechitza to separate the sexes in a synagogue, so now the question comes to mind, okay, fine, I agree, it makes sense to have a mechitza to eliminate distraction, but why don't we count women for the minyan? In other words, let's say there should be 5 men on one side of the mechitza, 5 women on the other side of the mechitza, and we have a minyan of 10 people, we have a quorum. Why is it that we need specifically 10 men? Let's talk about counting. First and foremost, the common answer of why we don't count women for a minyan is because the tradition of a minyan came about because of the sin of the spies. 10 of the spies came back with an evil report, and God said, Ad masai le'eda hara azois, how much longer must I deal with this evil congregation? He established the congregation with these 10 evil spies. So from here we see that it takes 10 men. The spies happen to be men, not women. It takes 10 men to establish a congregation. And in truth, from that time onward, we are constantly atoning for that sin of the spies. So every time 10 men get together, this is a quorum to atone for the 10 men that sinned when they went into the land of Israel. However, I believe there's a deeper answer, which is a more complementary answer of why women are not counted. And the answer is that counting in the Torah represents limitation and even death. And we find this in the Torah when God tells Moses to count the men from the ages of 20 to 60. And each of them shall give $50 to be an atonement for their soul. What are they atoning for? The men sinned when it came to the golden calf. The men participated by giving of their gold to build the calf. Now God says they must give of their money to atone for the making of the golden calf. The women did not participate in this making of the golden calf. They did not give of their gold and their jewelry. So now God says, count these men from the ages of 20 to 60. For these men who sinned with the golden calf from the ages of 20 to 60 will now die over the next 40 years in the desert. Therefore, God says, I want you to count the tribe of Levi, but count them outside of the other tribes of Israel. Count them from 30 days and older. And why is this? Because it is fit for the legion of the king to be counted separately, says Rashi. And why are they separate? Number one, they're going to serve me in the Holy Temple. And number two is they will not die over the next 40 years in the desert, because the tribe of Levi did not participate in the sin of the golden calf either. So the women did not die over the 40 years, and the tribe of Levi did not die over the 40 years. In other words, the decree that the generation should die did not apply to the women and did not apply to the tribe of Levi. And then there's one more detail, and that is Aaron HaKohen, Aaron HaKohen was the one that was supposed to help Moses count the tribe of Levi. And we are told, according to the opinion of Rashi, that Aaron HaKohen was not counted amongst the tribe of Levi. And the question is, why not? Aaron was of the tribe of Levi. So why is he not counted? And the Rebbe says the reason that Aaron HaKohen is not counted is simply because Aaron HaKohen was beyond number. In other words, he wore more than one hat. He was not limited to one job. On one hand, he was Moses' confidant. He was Moses' interpreter when it came to Pharaoh. On the other hand, he was the Kohen Gadol. He was the high priest. He brought the sacrifices of the Jewish people before God. He brought the Jews closer to God. He was also the first official marriage counselor and created the white lie. He told the husband who left the wife, you know, your wife loves you. She can't sleep at night. She wants you home. And because of that, the husband came home. And he would tell the wife, vice versa, that your husband cannot live without you. Please let him back into the house. Aaron was also the official outreach director. Any Jew that left the fold, he would go outside of the clouds of glory and bring them back in. So Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, had many, many responsibilities. He wore many, many hats. Says the Torah, he is not to be counted as one, because he's more than one. And we find that Elijah the prophet gives God the same compliment. What does Elijah the prophet say about God? He tells God, Antu chad v'loi b'chushbon. What does that mean? You are one and unique, but you cannot be counted because you are beyond number. Women who have the ability to bring so many children into the world, women who wear so many hats, they are beyond number. They are not to be counted as part of the minyan. Women are the partner of their husband. They are the husband's confidant. They are the mother of the children. They are the family psychiatrist. They are the family doctor. They are the chef. They are the cook. And by the way, the Kohanim, the main job of the Kohanim was to be the chef. They used to slaughter the animals. They were the butchers. And then they brought the meat on the altar. This was considered to be the greatest service amongst the people of Israel, to produce the food. So the women have so many responsibilities, they emulate God more than the men. And therefore they are not counted, even though they are beyond number. So let's say, okay, we agree that there should be a mechitza, and even though women are not counted, women should pray. As the Rambam says, if you need something, you have to ask for it. And we all need things every day. So the question is now, can a woman put on tzitzis? And can a woman put on the tefillin? Now, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. There are positive and negative. Amongst the positive, there are those that are restricted to a specific time zone. And then there are mitzvos that are not restricted to a specific time zone. For example, there are 6 mitzvos that are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at all times and in all places. Number 1, to believe in God. Number 2, not to believe in other gods. Number 3, to believe in the oneness of God, that God permeates every aspect of reality. Number 4, to love God. Number 5, to have awe and respect of God. And number 6, not to follow our heart's desires and what our eyes see. So these 6 mitzvos are something that we must do every day, 24 hours a day. It's a positive commandment that is not restricted to a specific time zone. And therefore, women are obligated to do these mitzvos. And perhaps even more than men, because men are busy doing the mitzvos that are restricted to a specific time zone. So now, therefore, the burden of responsibility fall on the women to do these mitzvos that are 24 hours a day, which answers an interesting question that when the Belzer Rav came to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he told the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I hear that in your schools, in the Chabad Lubavitch schools, known as Beis Rivka, they teach the girls Chassidus, the secrets of the Torah, the mystical aspects of the Torah. How is it that they teach the girls this teaching? And the Rebbe said, on the contrary, women have to learn Chassidus even first, even more than men. Because of the fact that they need to follow these 6 mitzvos 24 hours a day, and the only way to truly come to believe in God and to know God and to understand the oneness of God is only through the study of Chassidus, which primarily focuses on the unity of God and the greatness of God. So therefore we teach the girls Chassidus. So now, when it comes to the mitzvos that have a specific time zone, says the Talmud in Kedushin, women are not obligated to do it. Tefillin and tzitzis are 2 mitzvos, for example, that are restricted to a specific time zone. When it comes to tzitzis, right, that we wear, it says, Uri isem oisoi uzachartem is kol mitzvahs Hashem. You shall see them and remind yourself of all the commandments. And from here, the commentaries explain that tzitzis is only worn when you can see it during the day. Obviously today with electricity you can see it at night also. But that's not the commandment of the Torah. The commandment of the Torah is only during the day shall you wear the tzitzis, but there is no obligation to wear tzitzis during the night. It's a mitzvah that has a time restriction, a specific time zone, and therefore women are not obligated to do this. When it comes to tefillin, tefillin is something that we do not wear on the Shabbos. So therefore it has a specific time zone, only for a weekday, not for Shabbos. Therefore women are not obligated to put on tefillin. So now comes the question. Let's say a woman says, I want to put on tefillin. I want to put on tzitzis. Can they do it? The Targum Yonis ben Uziel says that they should not do it. And they are forbidden to do it. Why? Because there is a commandment in the Torah that says, Lesilbash gever simlas isha, a man shall not wear the garments of a woman, and similarly, a woman shall not wear the garments of a man. According to the Targum Rabbi ben Uziel, tzitzis and tefillin are masculine garments, and therefore a female should not wear this. However, this is not the halachic ruling. We do not find this reason in the coded Jewish law. On the contrary, to one's surprise, the Alter Rebbe writes in Siman Yud Zayin, chapter 17, pertaining to the mitzvah of tzitzis, that a woman can put on tzitzis if she wants. And she can make a bracha on it. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvayis v'tzivanu, that you have commanded me with this mitzvah of putting on tzitzis. However, he concludes, but she should not do it. Because this seems, merze kiyura, it seems as that person is conceited or arrogant. Why? Because in essence, the mitzvah of tzitzis, even for a man, is not an obligation on the body, but an obligation on the article. In other words, if a man is wearing a 4-cornered garment, he has the obligation to put on the tzitzis, the strings. And therefore, for a woman to put on the tzitzis means not only is she doing a mitzvah that she's not obligated to do, but she's not even doing a mitzvah that a man is obligated to do unless he has these 4-cornered garments. And being that there are so many other more important mitzvahs, why must she take this mitzvah over the others? Perhaps she has a score to settle. But if a woman truly wants, the Alter Rebbe says, she's allowed to do it. In contrast to tefillin, he says that a woman should not put on tefillin. And the halacha is that we should dissuade them from putting on tefillin. And even go as far as protesting if a woman is putting on tefillin. And the question is why? I saw a very interesting interpretation in the Hagois HaMaiminis, a commentary on the Rambam, Hagois Maiminis. And he says that when it comes to tefillin, there's a problem with modesty. How do you put on tefillin? You put it up on your arm, all the way on top. A woman is supposed to keep her arms covered over her elbow. And here she's going to picking up her arm in public and putting on tefillin. Secondly, a married woman has to keep her hair covered. She has to wear a sheitel. So what is she going to do? She'll take off the sheitel or the hat, push it back, so now her hair is exposed. And a woman's hair is called nakedness. So there's a problem with modesty. However, the Alter Rebbe does not bring down this answer in the Shulchan Aruch either. And so I believe that we can say that the reason why women don't put on tefillin is because of the fact that we do not put on tefillin on Shabbos. In other words, according to Kabbalah, women are Malchus. She represents the seventh of the holy supernal Sefirot attributes. And the seventh attribute of Malchus is the attribute of Shabbos. And we say this Friday night in L'chadoidi, let us go likras kala. Let us go towards the bride, the Shabbos bride. For Shabbos is the bride. A woman is the manifestation of Shabbos every single day of the week. And just like on Shabbos, men do not put on tefillin. And if they did put on tefillin, we would protest. So too, a woman who is a walking Shabbos does not put on tefillin. Now you might say, but I want to. So putting on tefillin on Shabbos is like blowing shofar when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. The idea of blowing shofar is to bring down a new light and energy into the world. When it falls out on Shabbos, we don't blow shofar. Why? Because Shabbos itself brings that energy into the world. Similarly, we don't put on tefillin on Shabbos because that accomplishment, that new energy that we bring down every day by putting on tefillin is accomplished automatically when we enter into the day of Shabbos. So putting on tefillin on Shabbos is redundant. It does nothing. It's happening already automatically. Your putting on tefillin does not cause a greater flow of energy into the world. The energy is coming by itself. There's nothing for you to do. So therefore, the halacha is, when it comes to tefillin, women should not put on tefillin because she's not accomplishing anything. But I want to take it a step further. I believe that this answers an interesting question. There seems to be an uncomplimentary statement about women in the Talmud. It says that Noshim Daitun Kalus. What does that mean? That the Das, we'll soon say what that means, the Das of women are Kalus. What does Kalus mean? There are those who interpret this to mean that women's knowledge are weak. We know that women's knowledge are not weak. There are many women who are smarter than men. Go to any university and you'll see. Also, girls mature much faster than men. At the age of 12, they have their bas mitzvah. And men have to wait to the age of 13 to have their bar mitzvah. Because a man matures a year later. So why is it that the Talmud says that Noshim Daitun Kalois, when we know the Talmud also says Bina Yeseda Nitna L'Isha, a greater level of understanding was given to the woman over the man. So we have to really understand this through the teachings of Chassidus. As we explained earlier, Chassidus says the difference between Bina and Da'as. Bina means understanding something. Da'as means application. Taking that understanding and bringing that down into action. And therefore, what I believe the Talmud is saying is, Noshim daiton kalos, that it's easy. The word kalos means easy, not weak. It's easy for women to bring it into action. A man goes to a Torah class, he comes home at night, the wife says, what'd you learn? Oh, the rabbi spoke about kosher. Really? So are we going to have kosher? Well, we'll worry about it tomorrow. He goes to sleep and he forgets about it. The woman comes home and she starts throwing all the dishes into the garbage and all the food into the garbage, and she's already ordering on the web new dishes. What's going on over here? Well, the rabbi said we have to have kosher, 2 sets of dishes. I'm making sure I'm bringing down into action. I'm applying the lesson into reality. For a woman to have das is very easy. And this also explains why they don't wear tefillin. Chassidus says, what is the concept of tefillin? We put the tefillin on our heads, and then we have straps coming down the sides, all the way down to our navel, and even beyond that. Why? Because the idea of tefillin is to take the knowledge and bring it down into the lower parts of our body, into action. Noshim daiton kalos. Women have that automatically. They don't need to put on the tefillin to accomplish this reality. Furthermore, the Talmud says, Isha keshera, a kosher woman, Oyser etzoin baila, creates the will of her husband. She has the power to inspire her husband and inspire the entire family. Which brings us to the next concept, and that is the concept of Torah study. Even though the concept of Torah study is a mitzvah upon men, v'agisu b'yom v'layla, a man has the obligation to study Torah day and night, yet a woman should also study Torah. The Alter Rebbe says in the Code of Jewish Law that a woman should make a bracha, berachas HaTorah, to make the bracha, asher brachabonim b'kolami, v'nasalonu es terasoi brachata Hashem nosin HaTorah. You have chosen us and given us the Torah. Because number one, when it came to the giving of the Torah, we know that God told Moses, first talk to the women, then talk to the men. And number two, women too have to learn Torah to know how to do. And the Rebbe said a number of years ago that women should learn Gemara also. Women can learn and should learn whatever they want. So women have the responsibility to study Torah. Furthermore, the Gemara says, Nashim b'maz hakoyin. In what way do women have a merit in the study of Torah even more than the men? By the fact that they inspire their children to go to the school and come back from the school, and they inspire their husbands to study Torah every day. They get a greater reward of Torah than if they would even learn Torah on their own. It's like we find the two brothers of Yisachar and Zevulun. Yisachar was older, Zevulun was younger, but yet Zevulun supported Yisachar. Without Zevulun's money, there would be no Torah study, and therefore in the Torah, Yisachar is mentioned, Zevulun is mentioned before Yisachar, even though he was younger. The Torah reverses the order to mention first Zevulun, because if not for Zevulun, there would be no Yisachar. If not for the woman, there would be no Torah. So A, they get credit by learning Torah on their own, and B, they get credit for inspiring the family to study Torah. Pertaining to prayer, they don't need to daven with a minyan, but they should daven. Just like men have needs, women have needs. We all have needs. And therefore, if you have needs, you have to pray. So every day, a woman should say the Shema, and every day, the woman should pray. And say the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei. So the question now remains, if women have to pray also, can they make themselves a women's group, a women's minyan, as they call it, or a women's prayer group? So let me give you two responses to that. Number one is, I heard that a rabbi in California once called up 770 and he spoke to Rabbi Chodakov, the Rebbe's secretary, and he asked Rabbi Chodakov, what should we do? There are some women here who want to start a women's prayer group. Is it something that we should support or not? Rabbi Chodakov responded as follows. We don't know if it came from the Rebbe directly or indirectly, but this was Rabbi Chodakov's response. He said that a synagogue is a miniature temple. And therefore, what was in the temple must be in the synagogue. Just like in the Holy Temple, in the Beis HaMikdash, men and women prayed side by side, separate places, but they prayed as one. So too, for our synagogue to be a miniature temple, which means that God should dwell in our temple, we need men and women to be praying side by side. Number two, he said, is that if you look into the history of the conservative and reform movement, you will see that the conservative movement and the reform movement also started this way by starting with women prayer groups. That's one story. The second story is a story that I've mentioned many times. It's also in the book by Divine Design. And that is the story of the Belzer Rebbe. That the Belzer Rebbe was building a beautiful synagogue in his town. He was very involved with the details of the synagogue. He was there from morning to night watching the construction of the synagogue. When the synagogue was almost completely finished, the Hasidim came to the Belzer Rebbe and said to him, Rebbe, can we have the services this Shabbos in this magnificent new edifice? And the Rebbe said to them, no, we cannot, because the women's section is not yet complete. So the Chassid said, Rebbe, you know, we don't need the women for the minyan. We could daven without the women's section. And the Belzer Rebbe responded that since the temple was destroyed, the gates for prayer have closed, but the gates for tears have never closed. When women pray, they pray with tears. We need the women to pray together with us in our synagogue. We are told that it was in the merit of the righteous women that our forefathers were redeemed from the land of Egypt. The Arizal tells us that the souls of this generation is a reincarnation of the souls that left the land of Egypt. And so, just like the women in that generation inspired their husbands and children to be deserving of redemption, so too it is incumbent upon all the women of our generation to exercise their feminine mystique and to truly inspire themselves and inspire their spouses and inspire their families to prepare themselves for the imminent arrival of the coming of Mashiach. V'mheira b'yameinu, amen.